Hello everyone. And welcome. I'm sorry it's been so long. I took an unintended vacation, a summer vacation from making videos. I spent a good amount of time traveling this summer, and I got to enjoy a number of different parts of the country that I have not visited before. Of note, especially for this channel, around the 4th of July weekend, in the beginning of July, so almost 3 months ago, I spent a long weekend in Sleeping Bear Dunes. Sleeping Bear Dunes is a national lakeshore, a part of the National Park System of the United States, managed by the National Park Service. It is one of 3 national lake shores, of which we have previously talked about Pictured Rocks, also in Michigan, and the Apostle Islands of Wisconsin. This means that Sleeping Bear Dunes was the final national lake shore for me to visit, as well as for us as a channel to visit. When I was there, I picked up a number of different promotional materials from the area. Some from the lakeshore itself, and some from the surrounding areas. We are going to start with the park itself, working primarily with the promotional map printed by the National Park Service. Unfortunately for my desk, this is a vertical map, but we'll make do. The area protected by the National Lakeshore is in Upper Michigan. To give a little bit of perspective, here is a state map of the state of Michigan in the Midwest region of the United States. Here in the south, we can see southern Michigan's relationship to the rest of the Midwest. Here we have Chicago and the full Indiana shoreline. And then in this, as we get further east, we get get into Ohio. As we get into Michigan itself, we get into the major cities of Detroit, Ann Arbor, Jackson, Kalamazoo, Benton Harbor and St. Joseph, Grand Rapids, the capital Lansing, and Flint. But to get where we're going, we need to travel farther north. Along US 10 or I-75 from the east, and along 196 to 131 from the west. And north of the major cities, we get to northern Michigan, which includes the Upper Peninsula, featuring Pictured Rocks, where we visited last year. And the area that we are going to focus on right here, along Lake Michigan, parallel roughly to Door County and the Door Peninsula, we have this tucked away area of Grand Traverse County, Benzie County, and Leelanau County, also known as the Leelanau Peninsula. And this is the area that we are going to be going into further detail in the park. So here we can see a zoomed in picture of essentially Benzie County to the south and Leelanau County to the north. The area covered by the National Lakeshore starts as far south as the towns of Frankfort and Honor, following the Platte River as it makes its way from Platte Lake along that portion of the lake shore until we get to the bluffs around the town of Empire. Empire also has the visitor center, the major visitor center for the National Lakeshore. It's where I got my memorabilia as well as this map. And it serves as a bridge to the two major areas of the Lakeshore, the Empire portion and the Glen Arbor portion. North of Empire, we get to the actual Sleeping Bear Dunes themselves. Now you may be wondering how these dunes got their name. Well, for one, they're sand dunes, which are not uncommon on the Lake Michigan shore, especially on the eastern Michigan shore of the lake. Indiana also has its share of dunes in the Indiana Dunes National Park, formerly a National Lakeshore. And these are called the Sleeping Bear Dunes in honor of a native, I believe, Ojibwe folktale about the creation of several of these dunes. The story goes that a mother bear and her 2 cubs had been grazing around northern Michigan and had wanted to cross over Lake Michigan to get to Wisconsin. But with as young as the cubs were, they were not able to swim. And so they ended up perishing in the lake. But as folklore has it, the bears did not leave nothing behind, but rather they became the islands at the north end of the park, separated from the mainland. These are North Manitou and South Manitou Island. These are visitable by ferry from the town of Leeland, which we'll see a little bit more later. And both of these have camping and hiking areas. Though South Manitou also has a couple of roads for motorized tours. It also has a lighthouse, and more camping sites. In addition to the islands for the bear cubs, there is also a humpback dune among the Sleeping Bear Dunes. That is, as the legend goes, the mother bear keeping a close watch of her cubs as they live on as the Manitou Islands. These dunes are where you'll find the most popular hikes, as well as a scenic drive that goes to a number of good viewing spots of the nearby Glen Lake, as well as Lake Michigan and the dunes. North and east of the dunes themselves is Glen Arbor, which is a cute little town, a very busy town, very touristy minded, but it does well, at least in the time that I visited, to serve the population that it is serving during tourist season. Nearby are 2 historic districts where older buildings from previous generations of inhabitants have been preserved. Glen Haven to the west, and Port Oneida to the east. Along Port Oneida is Pyramid Point, another major dude point on the eastern edge of Lakeshore. And lastly, there is the stretch along Good Harbor Bay, which, being protected by Pyramid Point, has calmer waters and is more easily accessible for swimmers. see the islands. As with most national park maps, the back side of the map is more informational, talking about the forces that have shaped the dunes. Mostly wave action from the lake, ice from when the lake freezes over in the winters, and wind year-round to shape the dunes. In addition, it also covers the natural habitats, including the inland lakes and Lake Michigan, the sandy beaches, the sandy dunes, and the nearby forests. And lastly, we see bits of the history of human, mostly Western settlement in the area, with Port Oneida and Glen Haven, the lighthouse. A couple of companions to the main map. One was an insert to the map, which primarily served to signify that in the year 2024, when I visited the current year, a number of the beaches had become closed to pets, and some of the areas to the south of southern end of the Lakeshore had been closed altogether to be able to prevent the spread of a fungus on the hemlock trees. Next side, as always, is informational, planning for practicing water safety by having a life jacket if you're on the water, putting out fires with water, staying on paths to protect endangered wildlife, and how best to plan your hikes. Sun protection, plenty of water, and good footwear. I also bought a privately created hiking trail map book as a hiking specific guide to the National Lakeshore. This is created by the Friends of Sleeping Bear Dunes, which is associated with the region and with the park, but not with the National Park Service. Of the trails, it did not go in the Old Indian. It was the main trail that had been closed due to the preventing the spread of the hemlock pests. I similarly avoided the trails on the south end of, the south end of the park. But I did do the Empire Bluff Trail. It is a rather short trail, around 1.5 miles, with a large portion of the trail, most of the trail, in fact, being wooded and shaded. But the final portion of the trail goes onto the bluffs and onto a boardwalk to a sitting area, which you can see in this photo of people sitting at the area and looking out at the lake. Just this gorgeous blue. It's only a mile or so away from downtown Empire. It is well worth the hike. Here we go. Moving to the middle section of the park, there are a number of different overlooks at the scenic drive, which here is being promoted as a place for skiing. I visited in the summer, so that wasn't a possibility for me. However, all of the dunes and Glen Lake overlooks are wonderful. There's a covered bridge, which is pretty picturesque. But the most, in my mind, the most notable overlook is the Lake Michigan overlook, which is one of two major steep dunes in the park. These are dunes that go essentially nearly vertical, or at least that's how they look from above. And they can be quite challenging to go up, especially go up, but also come down. You do get rewarded with a pretty remote portion of the Lake Michigan shore, but there are plenty of signs warning you that if you do not make it up and need to be rescued, that it is a significant fine on your part. Second to the Lake Michigan overlook, actually. Let me make sure it's in here. Yes, it is. Second to the Lake Michigan overlook is the Pyramid Point overlook. The hike here is longer because it is, in fact, a hike as opposed to a shorter walk to an overlook. But it is only a mile and 1.2 miles, so a mile and a quarter from the trailhead to the overlook. And again, you have a view out to the lake, which is wonderful. And you also have another steep, several hundred feet drop to the lake shore. You can see here the pristine bluish-green waters of the lake. In fact, it says here it's at 957 feet above the lake shore. Similarly, it has a number of signs to warn you not to go down, especially if you are not capable of going back up. most iconic trail, the most common trail for people to actually go on, and that it is a legitimate dune climb trail, is the Dune Climb and the Dunes Trail. The Dune Climb itself is a rather steep climb up roughly 100 feet. Checking, and it does not say how steep that climb is, but it is roughly 100 feet and is quite steep, out to a plateau of sand. And then from there, there is a nearly 4-mile out and back trail up several dunes with a view of South Manatee Island at the top of one, and a popular but still stunning piece of Lake Michigan shore to visit as well. It is quite popular. It can be difficult, particularly as you go up and down and up and down. You're also going up and down sand, which is quite a challenge to hike in normal conditions, including at different elevations. If you do plan to do the dune climb, definitely pack extra water, know your limits, and while it may be less comfortable, I found it easier to do in hiking boots than in sandals. Zooming out a little bit to the rest of the places I visited. Obviously, as the state National Lakeshore involved some visiting in and around Leelanau County. I did get a county map from a local bookstore, which includes all of the major highways, townships lined in this tealy blue, as well as the towns themselves. So, the village of Empire, Glen Arbor, have to go to the north side of the map, Leland, which is where the ferries to North and South Manitou Island take off, Northport, the Leelanau State Park, Peshawatown, Sutton's Bay, which is in fact on a bay, Maple City, Cedar, and Graylickville. Specifically, I spent time mostly along this stretch of highway, which is known as Michigan Highway 22, and is known as the main highway for the the main highway for the peninsula, as well as further down into Benzie County. Two places I stopped by in Leelanau were the town of Leland Here we have a promotional map of the town. Primarily focusing on the various businesses in and around downtown Leland. Including places to stay, real estate, cultural places like the library or the historical society, stores like bookstores, other shopping, and wineries and distilleries, which are quite popular up there this far north in the Midwest. Central to the history of Leland is Fishtown, which is a little bit modernized for the 21st century, but still remains a fishing hotspot along the Leland River, as well as out to Lake Michigan. Farther south along the river, there is also the Narrows, part of the river, but a part that connects south into Lake Leelanau. We can see here a little bit what that looks like in a larger context. We have the town of Leland here, down along Highway 22, but then 204. We cross over from the Leland River into North Lake Leelanau, the Narrows, and then South Lake Leelanau. Farther south, in the town of Cedar, I also found a Polish art center. Apparently, there are a number of places in Michigan, as in Wisconsin and Illinois and other parts of the Midwest, that have a connection to Polish immigrant communities, largely from the 19th and 20th centuries. Along with a cultural center, the art center also has various artworks, trinkets like dolls, Easter eggs, wooden carved eggs, more likely, and all manner of cookware and pottery available to purchase. There are two locations. I visited the one in Cedar, but for those that live in the Detroit area, Hamtramck also has another art center. For those that are interested in Polish heritage, either their own or in general, I definitely liked it. And while I can't say anything for the one in Hamtramck, the one in Cedar had a Polish food cart next door, which had wonderful gołąbki and pierogi. Highly recommend. And lastly, farther to the south and east, we get to Traverse City. Traverse City is the main actual city in this portion of northwestern Michigan. And they have their own, they're large enough to have their own tourism board, hence this magazine. But they also have they serve as a jumping off point to the rest of their portion of northern Michigan. So we see here the connection that they have to Leland, Shawbuton, Sutton's Bay, the Sleeping Bear Dunes, Empire, Frankfort, Honor, as far east as Acme and Elk Rapids and Five Lake. Traverse City makes no qualms about it being a place to stay as jumping off point for the Sleeping Bear Dunes. This is another view of the Lake Michigan dunes. Lake Michigan overlook at the scenic drive with the fairly steep dunes down below. Despite being relatively far north, the areas around Traverse City, and particularly this middle Old Mission Peninsula, are famous for their wineries and cherry orchards. This northern part of Michigan likes to call itself the Cherry Republic. And in fact, there is a store called the Cherry Republic in Traverse City and in Glen Arbor. In addition, there are also breweries, distilleries, and cideries for the apple orchardists. There are quite a few trails around, obviously harder hiking trails, but also accessible trails around the museums and along Boardman Lake. Here we have some of the rarer trails, none of which I did during my time there, including Clay Cliffs near Lake Leelanau, Whaleback near Leland, and Tweedle and Treat Farm Trail near Empire towards the south. Old Baldy Trail in Arcadia, and Pete's Woods in Arcadia Dunes. We have here a full index of trails from easy to moderate and challenging. After all of the different ways to visit, there's also a calendar of events for those mostly interested in visiting at given times of the year. Obviously, as a place far north in the Midwest, events center around the spring, summer, and fall months, and roll down as winter comes around. And lastly, we have an almanac of places to stay, places to eat, places to shop, and ways to get around. More places to shop, theaters and concert venues, ways to enjoy the water, and visiting resources like transportation, car rental, emergency services, and air travel. And with that, I think we've explored quite a bit. I certainly did. Of northern Michigan. I'm glad I had the chance to visit. I will definitely be doing so again, in the spirit of visiting other places in the Midwest. I will probably be revisiting next year, and for a much longer time. And I encourage you, if you are thinking of visiting the dunes, do so. Prepare well when doing so. And don't be afraid to see the rest of Leelanau County. Alright. I'm glad to be back. Thank you all for